I'm so looking forward to play against Alex because we played in Osaka before, like 2 years ago maybe.
Di ko pa mapaniwala. Maraming salamat sa suporta. Sana patuloy yung suporta niyo sa akin. Kamusta mga kapong Pinoy? Surprise! Excited na akong imbitahin kayong lahat na manood sa mga laban ko sa Mubadala Abu Dhabi Open.
Midnight chaos in Manila. The Alex Ela scandal that's tearing tennis apart. Stop everything you're doing right now. Put down that phone, pause whatever you're watching, and lean in close, because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of controversy that happens maybe once in a decade. The tennis world isn't just buzzing. It's on fire, and the flames are coming straight out of Manila, Philippines. We're talking about a scandal so explosive that it's got Japanese media outlets screaming foul play, Filipino fans ready to go to war, and a 20-year-old tennis prodigy caught in the absolute center of a storm she never asked for. This isn't just about a tennis match anymore. This is about national pride, alleged corruption, and a midnight verdict that's got everyone from Tokyo to Toronto picking sides. The Philippine Women's Open was supposed to be a celebration, a moment for the home crowd to rally behind their golden girl, Alex Ela, as she marched triumphantly through her home tournament. Instead, what we got was something far more dramatic, far more controversial, and infinitely more compelling. We got accusations of match fixing. We got a formal complaint that triggered an emergency investigation. We got hours of closed-door meetings, forensic video analysis, and a decision that came down in the dead of night like a verdict in a murder trial. And here's the kicker, the result stands. Alex Ela advances to the quarterfinals. Himino Sakitsum, the Japanese challenger who believes she was robbed in broad daylight, goes home in tears. But if you think that's the end of this story, you haven't been paying attention to how these things work. This is just the opening act of what could become the biggest scandal in women's tennis this year. Let me paint you the picture. January 28th, Rizal Memorial Sports Complex, Manila. The atmosphere is absolutely electric. The newly renovated tennis center is packed to the rafters with Filipino fans who've been waiting their entire lives for a homegrown tennis superstar they can call their own. Alex Ela is that superstar. At just 20 years old, she's carrying the hopes and dreams of an entire nation every single time she steps onto the court. The pressure would crush most people, but Eala has shown throughout this tournament that she's built different. Her performance in the round of 32 against Russia's Elena Kareva was nothing short of surgical. A devastating 6-1, 6-2 dismantling that sent a message to everyone in the draw. This wasn't just the local girl having a nice run at home. This was a legitimate contender playing the tennis of her life on the biggest stage her country has ever given her. The crowd went absolutely berserk. Drums were pounding, flags were waving, and the noise level was something you'd expect at a football match, not a tennis tournament. But then came the round of 16. Eala versus Himino Sakitsum of Japan. On paper, this looked like a routine victory for the Filipino star. The final score, 6-4, 6-0, suggests total domination. A bagel in the second set. A comprehensive beatdown. Case closed, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Because that scoreline is hiding one of the most controversial sequences of events in recent tennis history. The first set was an absolute war. Sakitsum came out swinging, and I mean swinging hard. The Japanese player, known for her grinding baseline game and her ability to frustrate opponents with relentless consistency, wasn't intimidated by the hostile crowd. If anything, she seemed energized by it. She was pushing Eala all over the court, using her lefty-killing cross-court backhands to pin the Filipino deep behind the baseline. Point after brutal point, Sakitsum was proving that she belonged on this stage. The set was tied at 4 games all. The tension in the stadium was thick enough to cut with a knife. This was the moment. This was where champions are made and pretenders are exposed. And then everything went sideways. What happened in that crucial 4-4 service game is now the subject of intense debate, formal complaints, and accusations that are threatening to overshadow the entire tournament. According to Sakitsum's coaching team, this is where the officiating completely fell apart. They claimed that during a pivotal rally, a ball that clearly clipped the line was called out. They alleged that when Sakitsum attempted to challenge the call, There were technical malfunctions or procedural irregularities that prevented a proper review. They're pointing to what they're calling phantom calls, decisions that seem to materialize out of thin air with no clear justification. And they're suggesting, in language that's barely coded, that the home court advantage wasn't just about the crowd noise. It was about the officials themselves. The momentum shift was immediate and catastrophic. Eala, showing the killer instinct that separates good players from great ones, immediately pounced on the opportunity. She broke serve to go up 5-4, and then held to take the set 6-4. That should have been a normal conclusion to a competitive set. Instead, it became the flashpoint for a controversy that's still raging days later. The second set wasn't even a contest. Sakitsum was mentally done. You could see it in her body language, in the way she was arguing with herself between points, in the complete collapse of her game plan. Eala steamrolled through 6 straight games, closing out the match 6-0 in a set that lasted barely more than 20 minutes. The crowd erupted. Eala celebrated. And Sakitsum walked off the court looking like someone who'd just witnessed a grave injustice. But here's where this gets really interesting. Sakitsum didn't just complain to her coach and move on. She didn't take the diplomatic route of saying, "That's tennis," and heading to the airport. No, her team filed a formal complaint with the tournament organizers. We're talking about a multi-page document alleging critical officiating errors, demanding a full review of the match footage, and essentially accusing the tournament of creating conditions that favored the local player. This wasn't a casual grievance. This was a declaration of war, and it set off a chain reaction that nobody saw coming. The tournament organizers had no choice but to take this seriously. Think about the optics here. You've got a major international tournament, sanctioned by the WTA, being accused of favoritism toward the home player. You've got Japanese media already running stories about the alleged injustice. You've got social media absolutely exploding with hashtags like rigged match and justice for Sakitsum trending alongside fearless Eala and proud Pinoy. The pressure was immense. So they launched an investigation. And I'm not talking about some cursory glance at the highlights. This was a full forensic examination. Sources close to the technical committee described the scene inside the review room as absolute chaos. The match had ended in the afternoon, but the deliberations raged well into the night. We're talking about officials pulling data from the electronic line calling system, reviewing high-definition slow-motion footage frame by frame, examining the audio communications between the chair umpire and the tournament referee, and even analyzing ball deformation patterns on the court surface. International media outlets started flooding the tournament office with requests for information as rumors of a potential result change began circulating. The officials knew they were sitting on a powder keg. Make the wrong decision, and you either invalidate the dreams of an entire nation or confirm the worst suspicions about corruption in professional tennis. The verdict came down just before midnight. After hours of analysis, consultation, and what multiple sources describe as heated arguments behind closed doors, the organizers issued their official statement. The result stands. Alex Ela's victory is confirmed. She advances to the quarterfinals. Himino Sakitsum is officially eliminated. But here's the critical part that everyone's debating. The organizers admitted in their statement that there were what they called marginal calls during the match. They acknowledged that certain moments were incredibly close and could have been decided differently. But they concluded that there was no clear and indisputable evidence of errors significant enough to warrant overturning the result or ordering a replay of specific points. That phrase, "no clear and indisputable evidence," is the kind of bureaucratic language that drives people absolutely insane. It's technically correct, legally defensible, and emotionally unsatisfying to everyone involved. It's the kind of statement that resolves nothing while pretending to resolve everything. For Sakitsum and her supporters, this was confirmation of their worst fears. They believed the fix was in from the start, that the pressure to keep the local star in the tournament influenced the decision-making at every level, and that the midnight review was nothing more than a rubber stamp on a predetermined outcome. Japanese tennis forums are calling it a national embarrassment. Some commentators are demanding that the WTA step in with an independent investigation. For Eala and her supporters, the verdict is vindication. They point out that Eala didn't make the calls, didn't influence the officials, and simply played the ball as it came to her. They argue that Sakitsum lost the match because she mentally collapsed in the second set, not because of any officiating controversy. They see the formal complaint as sour grapes from a player who couldn't handle the pressure of playing in a hostile environment. And caught in the middle of this hurricane is Alex Ela herself. The 20-year-old who just wants to play tennis and make her country proud is now being painted as either a victim of circumstances beyond her control or the unwitting beneficiary of a corrupt system. Neither narrative is fair to her, but that's the reality she's facing. Let's talk about who Alex Ela really is, because that context is crucial to understanding why this controversy has become so explosive. The Philippines has never had a tennis player of this caliber. Never. There have been promising juniors, respectable professionals, but nobody who's captured the national imagination the way Eala has. She's the Rafael Nadal Academy graduate who's lived in Spain for years, training alongside some of the best young players in the world. She's the former junior Grand Slam champion who's now making the difficult transition to the professional ranks. Every time she plays in the Philippines, it's not just a tennis match. It's a national event. Families gather around televisions. Social media goes crazy. The entire country stops to watch. That level of pressure would destroy most 20-year-olds, but Eala has consistently shown remarkable composure and maturity. Her quote from earlier in the tournament, "Their support gives me extra motivation every time I step on the court," now carries a different weight. The support is still there, overwhelming and passionate, but so is the scrutiny. So is the criticism from outside the Philippines. So is the burden of knowing that millions of people are watching her every move. The performance she delivered against Kariva showed that she's capable of handling big moments. The way she dispatched the Russian player was clinical, efficient, ruthless. Her lefty forehand, always her biggest weapon, had added significant pace. Her movement around the court was sharper than we've ever seen. Her serve, long considered the weaker part of her game, was landing with authority. She looked like a player ready to make a serious run at this title. But this controversy is a completely different kind of test. This isn't about shot-making or tactics or physical fitness. This is about mental strength in the face of a narrative that threatens to consume her. How she responds in the quarterfinals will tell us everything we need to know about what kind of champion she might become. Will the noise get to her? Will she crumble under the weight of the allegations? Or will she channel all that negative energy and use it as fuel to play even better? Because here's the thing that makes this situation so fascinating from a psychological perspective. Eala is simultaneously the hero and the villain, depending on who's watching. To Filipinos, she's the brave warrior fighting against international skepticism and jealousy. To Sakitsum supporters and neutral observers who believe the allegations, she's the player who got away with something she shouldn't have. That kind of cognitive dissonance is incredibly difficult to manage, especially for someone who's always been seen as the nice girl, the polite champion, the gracious winner. While the entire tennis world is obsessing over the Eala scandal, there's a shark swimming quietly in the deep end of this draw, and her name is Donna Vekic. The Croatian veteran has been absolutely ruthless in Manila, and she's doing it without any of the drama, any of the controversy, any of the media circus that's following Eala everywhere she goes. Vekic didn't come to the Philippines for a vacation or a payday. She came for the trophy, and she's playing like someone who has absolutely no intention of leaving without it. Her opening match against Japan's Kyoko Okamura was a statement of intent. 6-2, 6-2, a comprehensive dismantling that took just over an hour. Vekic's serve, always her most potent weapon, is landing like a freight train on these hard courts. Her ground strokes are penetrating deep into the corners. Her movement, often criticized earlier in her career, looks sharp and efficient. She followed that up by dispatching Maria Tkacheva in a match that received far less attention, but was equally impressive. While everyone was talking about Eala's controversial victory, Vekic was quietly doing her job, advancing through the draw without fuss, without drama, without giving her opponents any opportunities whatsoever. Vekic is the perfect psychological foil for Eala. She's 30 years old, a decade older than the Filipino star. She's been on the biggest stages in tennis: Wimbledon semifinals, US Open quarterfinals, battles against Serena Williams and other legends of the game. A noisy crowd in Manila isn't going to intimidate her. If anything, she feeds off that kind of hostile energy. She's played enough villains in her career to know how to embrace the role. Camila Osorio is exactly the kind of opponent that could give Eala nightmares. The Colombian is a fighter, a scrapper, someone who makes you earn every single point. She doesn't have the biggest serve or the most powerful ground strokes, but she's incredibly quick around the court. She scrambles like her life depends on it, and she has the mental toughness to stand up to hostile crowds. Osorio has been on tour long enough to know that tennis fans can be brutal, and she's developed a thick skin and a stubborn resilience that serves her well in these situations. Tactically, Osorio is going to try to disrupt Eala's rhythm at every opportunity. She's going to vary pace, mix in slices and drop shots, change the height and depth of her balls, and basically do everything possible to prevent Eala from settling into a comfortable groove. She's going to make Eala play defense, force her to generate her own pace, and test her patience in long rallies. This is the nightmare scenario for Eala, a match that becomes a war of attrition where the crowd and the occasion can actually work against her by creating too much pressure. But here's the thing. The real opponent for Eala isn't Osorio. It's the narrative. It's the ghost of the Sakitsum match that's going to be hovering over every single point. Every time a ball lands close to the line, people are going to be watching the umpire instead of the ball. Every time a call goes Eala's way, Sakitsum supporters are going to be tweeting about corruption. Every time Eala argues a point or questions a decision, it's going to be analyzed and dissected and used as evidence for whatever narrative people want to push. Eala has to find a way to block all of that out. She has to create a mental bubble where the only things that exist are the court, the ball, and her opponent. That's incredibly difficult to do at 20 years old with an entire nation watching and half the tennis world convinced you got away with something in the previous round. This is where champions are truly made. Not in the moments of glory, but in the moments where everything is chaos and you still find a way to execute your game plan. If Eala can somehow channel all this negative energy, all this doubt, all this criticism, and use it to fuel her performance, she'll be playing with a level of intensity that could be scary. We've seen players throughout tennis history who perform their best tennis when they feel like they have something to prove, when they're playing with a chip on their shoulder. If Eala can tap into that mentality, Osorio might be in serious trouble. While everyone's focused on the singles drama, we shouldn't completely ignore what's happening in the doubles competition. The mix of American, Taiwanese, and Thai partnerships has created some genuinely compelling matches on the outside courts. It's a reminder that this tournament, despite all the controversy and drama surrounding Eala, is actually a deep and competitive event with high-level tennis happening across multiple draws. The doubles matches have been flying under the radar, but there's been some excellent tennis played. The contrasting styles, the aggressive American teams, the consistent and technically sound Asian partnerships have produced some fantastic points and rallies. For the handful of tennis purists who can look past the scandal, the doubles courts have been a refuge where the tennis speaks for itself without all the surrounding noise. This is exactly why we watch sports. This is why we invest our time and emotional energy into following athletes and tournaments. Because sports at its best is unpredictable, dramatic, and emotionally resonant in ways that scripted entertainment can never match. The Philippine Women's Open has transformed from a routine tour stop into something much bigger, a genuine controversy that's forcing everyone to pick a side and defend their position. Was Himino Sakitsum robbed? Did the officials, consciously or unconsciously, allow the pressure of the home crowd and the desire to keep the local star in the tournament to influence their decision-making? Or is this all just noise from a losing player and her supporters who can't accept that Eala was simply better when it mattered most? These questions don't have easy answers, and that's what makes this so compelling. The midnight verdict from the tournament organizers has settled the matter legally and officially, but it hasn't settled anything in the court of public opinion. Eala is through to the quarterfinals, and that's what the record books will show. But the asterisk is already there in people's minds. The questions will linger. The debate will continue long after this tournament ends. For Alex Ela, this is both a curse and an opportunity. The curse is obvious. She's going to carry this controversy with her for the rest of her career. Every time she has success in the Philippines, people are going to bring up the Sakitsum match and question whether she got favorable treatment. That's just the reality of how these things work in the age of social media and instant hot takes. The midnight verdict from the tournament organizers has settled the matter legally and officially, but it hasn't settled anything in the court of public opinion. Eala is through to the quarterfinals, and that's what the record books will show. But the asterisk is already there in people's minds. The questions will linger. The debate will continue long after this tournament ends. For Alex Ela, this is both a curse and an opportunity. The curse is obvious. She's going to carry this controversy with her for the rest of her career. Every time she has success in the Philippines, people are going to bring up the Sakitsum match and question whether she got favorable treatment. That's just the reality of how these things work in the age of social media and instant hot takes. But the opportunity is equally significant. If Eala can somehow push through all of this noise, win the quarterfinal, and potentially go on to win this entire tournament, it would be one of the most impressive mental performances we've seen from a player her age in years. To survive this kind of scrutiny, this kind of pressure, this kind of hostile attention from international media, and still find a way to perform at your highest level, that's the mark of a true champion. Donna Vekic, meanwhile, is probably somewhere in her hotel room, just smiling. While everyone else is caught up in the drama, she's focused on the only thing that matters: winning tennis matches. She's the professional, the veteran, the player who's seen it all and knows that tournaments aren't won by the player with the best story or the most sympathetic narrative. They're won by the player who executes best under pressure and makes the fewest mistakes in the big moments. If we get an Eala Vekic semifinal, and the way both players are performing, it's looking increasingly likely. It's going to be one of the most fascinating contrasts in styles, experience, and mentality that we've seen all year. The young, emotional, pressure-packed local hero against the cold, calculating, experienced veteran. The player carrying the hopes of millions against the player who thrives on being the villain. It's the kind of matchup that transcends the actual quality of tennis and becomes something more, a genuine sporting drama that people will remember for years. The 29th of January is going to be absolutely crucial. Two quarterfinal matches that could define the narrative of this entire tournament. Vekic has a clear path to the semifinals if she takes care of business against Zhu. Eala has a much more complicated task. She has to beat Osorio while simultaneously battling the ghost of controversy past and the weight of national expectation. The Rizal Memorial Sports Complex is going to be absolutely packed. The atmosphere is going to be electric and probably hostile to anyone not wearing Filipino colors. The umpires are going to be under a microscope, knowing that every call they make will be scrutinized by thousands of people in the stadium and millions watching at home. The pressure is going to be absolutely immense. This is what separates tennis from every other individual sport. It's not just about physical ability or technical skill. It's about mental strength, emotional control, and the ability to perform under pressure when everything around you is chaos. Eala is about to find out exactly what she's made of. She's going to discover whether she has the mental fortitude to not just survive this controversy, but to use it as motivation to reach even greater heights. The tennis world is watching. The Philippines is holding its collective breath.
Kamusta mga kapong Pinoy? Surprise! Excited na akong imbitahin kayong lahat na manood sa mga laban ko sa Mubadala Abu Dhabi Open.
Ganar un torneo de Copa Colchanitas es un gran desafío, pero retener el título, defenderlo, es otro. ¿Cómo está la preparación y cómo se siente para esta aventura que arranca ya muy pronto?
I think it was an overall good week. Of course, disappointed about today. I definitely think I've had